It's the kind of house they don't build anymore. A relic of a time when the world wasn't in such a hurry, when there was still time for a little charm and elegance. It has stood empty for a long while, and at the price, it is a bargain. For a growing young family, it is almost too good to be true.
What do you think?
I love it.
I'm coming apart! Oh, Mother of God, I'm coming apart!
28 days after the Lutz family moved into their dream house, they were running for their lives. What happened to them is an experience in terror you will never forget, and you will believe in the Amityville horror.
Hey there, newlyweds. Nuds. Nuds.
Not like nuggets, but nuds. Nugs and nuds and nuns.
Hey there, newlyweds, nuns, priests, and just one of the best dogs ever. He's a very good boy.
Welcome to another episode of What Happens in the Crypt.
Today, we are talking about the 1979 film, The Amityville Horror.
We'll also be discussing parts of the more recent documentary about the real-life Danny Lutz titled My Amityville Horror, as well as the real story of the tragedy that took place there.
We have a lot. I can't speak today. We have a lot to talk about today. A brief synopsis of the film. Newlyweds and their 3 kids move into a large house where a mass murder was committed. They start to experience strange, inexplicable manifestations which have strong effects on everyone living or visiting the house.
Trigger warnings for this one include gore, violence, there is a brief scene of domestic abuse, disturbing imagery, and mental distress.
The tagline for this movie is, "For God's sake, get out."
I still think I'm going to order that hoodie that just says "Get Out" on it. It has the house. To start off, we're going to talk about the actual murders that took place at the Amity house. So in the first movie that we're talking about today and all of the sequels that follow, the truth is that there really was a man that murdered his entire family in the house and claimed that there were voices that told him to do it.
Around 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, November 13th, 1974, 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo Jr. entered Harry's Bar in Amityville, Long Island, New York, and declared, "You gotta help me. I think my mother and father are shot." DeFeo and a small group of people went to 112 Ocean Avenue, which was located near the bar, and found that DeFeo's parents were dead inside the house. On a closer inspection, it revealed that 6 members of the family were dead in their beds. The victims were Ronald Jr.'s parents, Ronald DeFeo Sr., and Louise DeFeo, and his 4 siblings, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew. All of the victims had been shot with a .35 caliber lever-action rifle, around 3 o'clock in the morning of that day. The DeFeo parents had both been shot twice, while the children had all been killed by a single shot.
Physical evidence suggests that Louise DeFeo and her daughter Allison were both awake at the time of their deaths, and according to the Suffolk County Police, the victims were all found lying face down in bed.
Ronald DeFeo Jr., also known as Butch, was the eldest son of the family and its lone surviving member. After a series of interrogations and changes in his own story, Ronald DeFeo Jr. eventually admitted to the killings himself.
And this is a direct quote from DeFeo. "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast," end quote, which is so scary.
He admitted that he had taken a bath and redressed, and detailed where he had discarded crucial evidence such as blood-stained clothes and the Marlin rifle and cartridges before going to work as usual. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say that voices told him to do it. And there's a lot of controversy with this crime and the hauntings, where there's like half the people don't believe it and half the people believe it. But some people just said he tacked that on to get the insanity plea. Although it didn't end up working out so good for him. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, it's just one of those things that's, like, controversial.
Yeah. I'm going to interject. Do you think that it's haunted? The Amityville house?
I don't think so.
No?
Which is funny because my dad is adamant that it's definitely haunted.
Well,
because
I was going to say, you have that story.
Yeah, my aunt actually went to the house and tried to take pictures of it, and every single time she walked up to the house, the camera wouldn't work. And then she would walk away, like get back in her car, test the camera, and then it would work. And then she would go back to the house, and it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And she never did get a picture of it.
So weird. I guess I think that it probably is haunted. I lean towards, which we'll get into a little bit later, that the haunting story that the movies are based off of, I don't know how accurate that is. I'm sure some things maybe were happening, but not to that extent, because of like the financial situation that they were in and stuff. There's a lot of different things that could have been going on. But I just find Lorraine Warren so believable. I don't know why. I feel like she really can talk to ghosts and that she has Jesus Christ on her side. I just believe her.
Now, to back up this actual claim that there were supernatural elements in the case, all 6 of the victims were found face down in their beds with no signs of struggle. The police investigation concluded that the rifle had not been fitted with a sound suppressor. While having admitted to have drugged the family, the doctor actually said, "We did extensive toxicology, not only on the blood and urine, but on all of the organs that we removed, and it turned up 0. And there wasn't anything in their bodies." So that just adds another insane element to the story because, well, what are the odds that a doctor tested everybody's blood, urine, and organs incorrectly? Because that's his only
pretty
job.
Much impossible.
And the fact that he shot 6 people and nobody woke up.
Or like there's
or got up.
Also like what if he said it like if you stay in your bed face down, I won't do it to you. You know what I mean? There's weird stuff like that. I know.
That. It's just it's the number that's the shocking part. It's 6 people.
Because that
means not a single one of them
and
even turned around.
He started with the parents, right?
Yes.
Because the kids would have been much more pliable to, like, take instruction to, like, save themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but he shot... It's a lever-action rifle, so that means they stayed down.
Yeah.
Because it's not a fast. It's like, boom, boom, boom. So he's got to, like... They didn't even try.
The actual true crime is really scary.
Yeah.
But also, weirdly, the neighbors did not report hearing any gunshots being fired. And those that were awake at the time of the murders simply heard the dog barking, which is very weird because, like...
Guns are loud.
And, like, I'm trying to say, like, not that we ever hear gunshots where we live, but, like, you can hear shit that happens on 8 Mile, a mile away, if there's, like, something loud or a car accident. Like,
It is weird.
Yeah. And they're, like, kind of in a more secluded area where sound just carries way faster.
And there are people that live nearby.
Yeah.
It's not
secluded.
It's not like in the country.
Like they are not secluded, rather.
The events of this night led to a book being written by Jay Anson titled The Amityville Horror. And this is what the movie is based off of. Jay Anson, the writer of the book, actually wrote out a screenplay for the film, but the producers turned it down. Eventually, they found Sander Stern and liked his take on it.
Initially, Stern was assigned to write an entirely new script, and the film had been conceived as a made-for-TV movie, which would have been such a bummer.
Brolin, who plays George Lutz, actually hesitated when he was first offered the role. At the time of his casting, the script was unfinished, and so Brolin obtained a copy of Anson's novel to read. Brolin started the book and read until 2 o'clock in the morning. He had hung up a pair of pants in the room earlier, and during an especially tense passage of the book, the pants fell on the floor.
That would scare me so bad. I was reading a scary book and something fell.
Brolin jumped from his chair in fright. It was then that Brolin decided to do the film, convinced that the material would make an effective film.
Because the movie was on a pretty low budget, Brolin also took less money up front, but took a promise of 10% of the gross sales. And of course, the movie unexpectedly became a huge blockbuster, which it was almost a made-for-TV movie.
I know.
Like, no one expected this. And he eventually received $17 million for his role. If adjusted for inflation, that would be the same as a little over $55 million. Margot Kidder was cast for the role of Kathy after her breakthrough performance as Lois Lane in Superman. And also there's a scene in the movie where she's doing dishes and she is humming the Superman theme from whatever part she was in. I've never seen it, that Superman.
Oh, I mean,
Have you?
I don't think they're great.
Okay.
Everybody loves her. All the nerds love her because of this.
That's funny.
Yeah, like last time we talked about Margot Kidder was when in our episode on Black Christmas, and I had mentioned that I was supposed to meet her just before she died. And
What's stupid is I literally didn't even connect the Superman thing to Comic-Con. I was just like, she's a horror actress. Like, they do the circuits still for Comic-Con.
Yeah, so she's I don't want to say most famous for Superman,
Lane.
but yeah, all the nerds know her as Lois Lane.
That's funny. I did not put that together. Because I've never been to Comic-Con, but I like think about the one where, what's his face from Devil's Rejects would come every year. Which one is that? Is that regular Comic-Con?
Motor City Comic Con, yeah.
Yeah. So like that, he's just a horror guy.
Wait, which one? Who?
Spalding.
Oh. I didn't know that he went.
Yeah, he came every year to the Detroit one.
What?
Uh-huh.
I didn't meet him?
I
Well.
didn't either. But I just mean like, so I thought that I didn't, whatever. I'm just saying I don't think of her as Superman. That's all.
Well, she's not Superman.
I know. Wow.
She is a superwoman, but she doesn't.
Lois Lane doesn't have powers, does she?
No, I'm saying like Margot Kidder is
Oh.
a superwoman.
Okay. Does Lois Lane have powers?
No, Margot Kidder does.
Fair. She was raised by wolves. She's got lots of powers.
One of the scenes from this movie that will always stick out for me is where the priest played by Rod Steiger.
I would say
Steiger. The scene where he goes into the upstairs like playroom or whatever, because he's blessing the house. This is very towards the beginning. Mm-hmm. And the scene where he just has all the flies on him and he starts coughing. It's very terrifying.
Yeah, it's really gross.
Yeah, it's super
all
gross.
Those like super close-ups of the flies too.
Mm-hmm. And I read that to get the flies to be attracted to his head, they just put honey on him.
So gross. No, thank you. I would refuse.
Yeah, but it looked good.
He looks so sweaty in that scene.
I'm sure he's actually sweaty.
Yeah, so he's super sweaty and covered in honey and flies.
Yep, but it's a terrifying scene.
Ugh.
I also read that the cinematographer for this movie had a hard time with it because he thought the flies were so gross, and he had a hard time doing the close-up shots.
Yeah.
He had to do it like a lot of times because he didn't want to look at them, so he'd mess up the shot because he would look away.
And I mean, I don't inherently think that flies are gross. They're just a bug, but like, that's gross.
Yeah. And
honey flies is gross.
And also, apparently, he lost a lot of weight shooting this movie because with all the flies around, he didn't want to eat.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this more later because Danny Lutz, the real Danny Lutz, says this is basically what happened in real life.
That the flies were real, yeah. One of the weirder scenes in this movie is the part where Margot Kidder's character looks out the window and sees those like flashes of red eyes.
Jody,
yes.
It's Jody, her imaginary friend.
It is Jody. But what was said that the family really saw was a pig with wolf's teeth. And so, of course, they tried to, like, set that up in the movie. But I thought it was hilarious that they felt like Margot Kidder wasn't giving a strong enough reaction to the idea of the pig. And so they got a real pig, not a real pig, but a prop pig to try and actually scare her to get a better reaction. So they ended up getting an orange stuffed velour pig with glass eyes. And they surprised Margot Kidder with it in a shot. And instead of screaming, she could not stop laughing because it was just like the silliest thing. They were like, this is what you're afraid of.
It does sound strange to look at. But
in real life,
funny.
A ghost pig with wolf's teeth would be really scary and red eyes.
I think that makes me think of Saw. Isn't there one who wears a pig head?
Yeah, that's in all the movies, but there's no wolf's teeth.
one of the other terrifying scenes that always sticks with me is when the babysitter gets locked in the closet. This happens a little before the Jody scene out of the window. Mm-hmm. Because in this scene, Jody basically locks the babysitter in the room and she's just screaming, "Please let me out, please." Yeah. And she was in there for a long time.
Yeah. Like however long they were out, definitely. Oh, and she's just so sad with her braces. Like, you just feel so bad for her. She probably only made like $20 that night. Like,
hope they paid her more.
But yeah, that part's creepy. And that part's creepy too because it shows that Jody has control over the little girl. Mm-hmm. Control, so to speak. Like, she won't, cross Jody.
I'm just going to talk about these scenes for a little bit because this isn't really behind the scenes, but this is this is kind of why I like the movie so much. It's like this entity. It's not like modern horror movies. In the modern horror movies, it's always like the ghost wants the kid or the baby or to possess someone and take them over. That's like every modern horror movie. But this one, it says, "Get out." And it just wants them to leave. That just leads to a lot of different interactions because you never see it. There's never just a shot of the whole ghost or entity like in so many movies nowadays.
It's not like The Nun where the cover is the bad guy or even It where it's like, it's Pennywise. Like this is just like, it's basically like hell is within the house. So it's, nameless, faceless.
And it goes, I like that it goes a little deeper too. For example, like the nun is still feeling sick even after she's driven away and stops to throw up. Mm-hmm. And the sound of her throwing up, my dad plays out of a boombox during Halloween.
Which I literally recognize it in the movie. And when he's playing it at Halloween, that it's her.
I wouldn't say Halloween. I would say the entire month of October. Because my dad's Halloween display is huge. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter because we'll definitely post pictures in October. Uh-huh. What I also found very interesting is like the driving scene, which would have been a hell of a hard scene to shoot.
Yeah, the whole hood just blocks the window. Which
is like their car being attacked by the entity.
Right.
And even in the church, that's always like one of the freakier parts because like that's supposed to be safe, especially if you're a priest.
The guy we said his name already, but the guy that plays the priest is a very good actor.
He is.
Like, that part is so intense and so scary. When you see the little shard fall off, but then it doesn't actually happen.
Another thing this movie does so well is it's kind of similar to, like, The Shining, where it's, like, he's not just, bam, insane. George is, you can tell, like, slowly... Unraveling. Yeah. And there's, like, the scene where he's just chopping wood and his coworker shows up and he throws the axe into the tree. That's always... I don't know, unsettling to me. It's always like...
He's scary.
Scary, yeah.
He's like unhinged.
And then just the final scene where he... what is he? He's like, I'm coming apart! Yeah. And the scene where he hits Margot. Yeah. Like that, it's just so intense. And they start off so happy. Yeah. And it... Because it takes like all of the 2 hours to get there, almost.
Right.
And it's just a really good build-up. And lastly, on the actors, both James Brolin and Margot Kidder are on record saying they didn't believe the Amityville story. Mm-hmm. So they don't think it's haunted.
Yeah. Obviously, the Amityville house is very noticeable because of the evil eye-shaped windows. And a few years ago, the current owners actually swapped out the windows for regular ones. So it's a lot harder for people to actually like pull up and try to find it and take pictures and that type of thing.
Originally, they wanted to shoot the movie in the house. Mm-hmm. And obviously they were turned down.
Yeah. Makes sense in theory, but also would have been like so weird and hard.
Mm-hmm. The movie was actually shot in a residence in Toms River, New Jersey, which had been converted to look like the 112 Ocean Avenue home. The basement featured in the movie is shown to be a dark and creepy, almost like it's like a dungeon, basically. Yeah. It looks terrifying. But in reality, the Amityville home had a full finished basement, and they used it as like a rec room and hangout space.
It's not like the portal to hell.
No. And the original house also had a swimming pool. But they did a good job making it look like the house.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially when you see like pictures from when the Warrens did their investigation and stuff. Like you can actually like almost line up the banisters from where they actually filmed it.
Apparently while filming, they like would make up stories to build like hype for the movie. So they would say that there were unusual occurrences on the set.
And actually, I thought this was one of those ones that was like a haunted film, you know? But I guess it is bullshit. Because I also Googled it a little bit and nothing really came up.
But they did decide to do like a, like pictures in front of the real house.
Right.
For the movie. For like local papers and advertisements. At the time of its release, the film was one of the highest grossing independent films of all time and American International Pictures' biggest hit.
The budget for this movie was $4.7 million, and it went on to make over $85 million. The true story behind the movie has also been very relevant in current horror movies, as obviously The Conjuring 1 and 2 both follow Ed and Lorraine Warren, and I think the second Conjuring actually has the Amityville house in it.
Does it?
Yeah, because that's remember, that's where they start.
Oh, okay.
In that second one. And also the Annabelle movies moving forward also feature Ed and Lorraine Warren's story, but not so much the Amityville stuff beyond that.
Ed and Lorraine Warren were also demonology advisors for the Amityville sequel. And Amy's doll in the movie is a Raggedy Ann, which that's what the real Annabelle was. A Raggedy Ann. And as we're about to discuss, Lorraine Warren was in the recently released documentary, My Amityville Horror. She is actually pretty close to the Lutz family, and especially Danny, who is the focus of the documentary.
What I really like about this documentary is it doesn't focus on one angle. It's not a documentary that's trying to prove that the house is actually haunted, or that the house is not haunted, or...
It's kind of like a neutral take.
I find it very neutral. I think it's really well done.
Because it gives you, like, hey, there is weird shit that happened there, but it also could have been this, which isn't supernatural.
And also in like a weird way, it is kind of like the profile of not like a child actor, but someone who grew up with their life influenced by a movie.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that they discuss in the documentary is if the real life Danny actually has these memories, or because he was 12 when the movie came out, if he watched the movie and it kind of got buried in his brain that it really happened. So I like all of that stuff. There's a lot of different like mental health people involved that they interview and what they think could be going on with Danny as a person. And it's really cool. It's worth watching for sure.
Yeah, especially because he brings up a lot of points that, like, are directly in the movie. He's like, yep, that's almost how it happened when I was a kid, except for yada, yada, yada.
Right.
Or there was way more in real life. Like, in real life, he said their beds would just like suddenly take off and just be floating near the ceiling. All of them at the same time.
And I think I should briefly interject trigger warnings for this. There is a lot of talk about mental illness as well as like abusive situations. Is there anything else like for the documentary? Because it's really just heavy on like the abuse that he says happened to him, you know?
Yeah, so that is one thing the movie leaves out, is that apparently George Lutz was like an abusive stepfather.
Yeah. Yep. So, very sad.
I love in the documentary all the times, a little off topic, but there's a lot of times where he's playing his guitar.
Oh yeah, I feel like he was like, I'll only do this documentary if you show me playing my guitar.
So there's just like five at least guitar solos, just brief.
Yeah, no, it's
sometimes
great.
On different guitars.
It is great. And he also drives like weird old cars that they show a lot. But yeah, they do at the end of the documentary tell you as well that he's the only one of the siblings that was willing to participate. Yeah, none of the other ones will talk about it. And he says many times he doesn't like associating himself with the house or the movie or the book. He actually said that it feels like it's opening an old wound. Yeah. And you can see in his eyes and his voice how much it hurts him. Right. It's actually very touching and sad. Uh-huh. A few things that are in the documentary that like coincide with the movie. So for one, he really goes into detail about the window slamming aspect, which happens in the movie. And he says that he had his hands in the window and it slammed down, and that 3 adult men could not lift the window off of his hands. And that they took him into the kitchen once they pried the window off, and his hands, he said, were like as big as baseball mitts or something ridiculous. And that no sooner did they go to the kitchen that his hands were fine, except his pinky was crooked. Like that it was all like a weird hoax with like the house.
Not a hoax, like trick placed that the spirit
A
had
hoax and a
confound-
trick are almost the same thing.
Well, hoax means like it's fake.
One of the other things he mentions that I thought was just very interesting, which is not in the movie, but that whole part where he talks about seeing a spirit.
Oh yeah, in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Because in the movie, she goes up to the door and talks to a man who disappears. And then doesn't the door fly open?
I think so.
But in real life, they said that it was even scarier than that. They were in the kitchen, and then he watched and felt somebody just sit next to them.
But what I liked about his retelling of that is he didn't even give a physical description. He just said there was a spirit, which is just kind of spooky. It's very spooky. There is also an amazing scene where they go to Lorraine Warren's house, which is, it's so cool. I want to like go there very badly.
And at some point, I guess we're going to have to do an episode just on Ed and Lorraine Warren, because they're the most famous. What is their title?
I think they're demonologists.
Demonologist?
Yeah, technically.
Okay.
But when they go to Lorraine Warren's house, she remembers him like from when he was a child because of this whole case. And you get to see some of their like, I think they call it their museum, right? Of haunted objects. And she has chickens or roosters, which just adds another layer of like, what is happening here? But she does at one point, and this is so like assertive and like aggressive. She asks everyone in the room, like the crew included, if they believe in God, because she wants to bring out a relic of like the
actual
cross. Ugh, it's so intense.
Yeah, anybody who says no, like can't look at it.
Yeah, or has to leave the room or something. It's very intense.
There's also this picture that they show that's like the top of the stairs that shows a little boy's face. And they insist, like, apparently the family, because they made the family leave. And then the Warrens were doing stuff, and there were other paranormal investigators there. So there were no children in the house.
And that photo is very scary.
It's terrifying.
We'll post it.
We'll post a
Jinx.
picture of it.
But
yeah, so at some point we're going to have to do an episode on that and Lorraine Warren. But yes, when Lorraine Warren was in the house, she said she was in hell.
Yeah. And like I said, I just believe her. I don't know why. I just really do. Another thing that's interesting about that part of the movie is, or of the documentary rather, is there's like a little conversation between her and Danny where they talk about George, and she kind of immediately corroborates, like, George was a difficult guy or something like that. So that was interesting too. And I think the whole documentary is a little bit of like a healing journey for Danny, and to have that like corroborated by her was very cool to see too.
They also go on to say that in real life, it wasn't only George who was getting angrier and angrier. It was actually the whole family that was getting angry and violent.
Just during the month that they were there.
Yeah, but the parents were worse than the kids, and they would beat them. And throughout the whole documentary, and he says it many times, but Danny hates George.
Yeah.
He said he would have killed him if he could.
Yeah, just when you watch this, he's a very intense human being.
But this is not only like a good documentary if you've seen the movie. I mean, you don't even necessarily need to have seen the movie to watch the documentary. It just adds another level. But it's a good paranormal documentary. It's also just like a good like human studies documentary.
Pretty much.
Just seeing the emotions and what he's gone through. It's just a good documentary because they even talk, like, there's just extra tidbits that you find out in the documentary that aren't in the movie. Like, George may have been into the occult.
Yeah.
Like, apparently he had some, like, satanic books. Mm-hmm. And they also show a side-by-side of George and Ronnie DeFeo Jr.
Yeah, and that's really freaky.
They look a lot alike.
Yeah.
And I'm going to post that now, so look at yesterday's
Yeah.
Instagram and Twitter post. But they do look a lot alike. And the picture they use, like, George is, like, more combed. But, like, it's
their
uncanny.
features are similar,
they're very
though.
similar.
Yeah. One of the other angles that the documentary does explore, which I think is an important one if you're kind of trying to decide if you think the house is haunted or not, which is the Lutz family's finances, which they don't go into it in depth, but it was nice that they took some time to, like, explain that, yeah, they didn't have any money. Yeah, they were able to get, like, a movie deal out of this and all the ways that they benefited from fleeing the house and saying it was haunted. So I just like that that was in there, too.
And the other... What kind of solidifies it for me is the fact that there are so many lawsuits surrounded by this movie and the family. Mm-hmm. And, you know, people suing the Lutz family for making it up and countersuing, saying, no, it's real. And there was, like,
it's a big old mess.
Supposed conversations between the parents and the kids saying they have to go along with it.
Yeah.
Like, and there's the whole angle of, like, you know, if your parent, because these were kids, and their parents are saying the house is haunted, there's ghosts, and you know, how are you as a little kid gonna say no? Right. You're wrong to your parents.
And kids think that everything is haunted anyways. So if you tell them yes, it's haunted, they're gonna see things and hear things. I really love this movie. It's definitely classic. And as far as the documentary goes, it's very sad to watch, but it definitely gives you some insight into the Lutz family home, which is an interesting take.
And it's interesting that this is not just a movie. It's also like a real-life event, and there's also a book. Yeah. So if you are... It's like horror and true crime all mixed into one.
The perfect combo.
Yeah, it's our all of our favorites all in one. But it just gives you another interesting angle. It's so crazy just to see the movie and then to read about the real case. And even the real case is crazy. So you're like, it can't just be over with. Yeah. Oh, but one thing I didn't read before that I want to add now is the update that I found on the DeFeo case, actually. And as of February 2021... DeFeo is held at the Sullivan Correctional Facility in the town of Fallsburg, New York, and all of his appeals and requests to the parole board to date have been denied.
Yeah, not surprised. I don't think he'll ever get out.
Released.
No.
He will never be released.
He murdered his whole family.
Yes.
You don't get to come back.
But yeah, I didn't want to leave. I don't know. Somebody's going to listen and freak out. I don't know. Just in case.
Mm-hmm. For this movie, the only on-screen deaths are the actual DeFeo family, which is really just shown in the beginning when they're touring the house. There's like the little flashes of the gunshots and everything, but the dog lives, so that's important.
When Margot Kidder is like, she was shot in the head.
Yeah, that part's really scary too.
My dad also plays that part, but that part is terrifying. Yeah. And she has the dream about it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's 6 deaths. Yeah. Yeah. The Amityville Horror is available to watch on HBO Max, and the documentary is available for rent on Amazon. And we both think it's definitely worth it.
For next week's episode, we're going to be talking about Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which is an old one that I watched as a kid that really scared me. And Sean's never seen it, so this will be fun.
I have never seen it. So it is a 1962 black and white film.
With Bette Davis and Joan Crawford.
Yeah, we're going to spend a lot of time. The thing I do know about this movie is that they notoriously hated each other.
Yeah.
So
no, there's some interesting dynamics between the two actresses. It'll be a good episode.
It's going to be interesting. It's also on our big horror movie list to watch. Like, we have that scratch-off poster that we've posted a couple times. So stay tuned for that. Wow, that's a picture of her with a giant creepy doll. That's going to be terrifying.
Yep.
Oh boy.
Don't look at anything else. We have to watch it.
Her makeup is terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy.
Stop looking.
I don't need to sleep.